Amazing turnout, so thank you so much for coming. I don't think I've ever been in a lecture this busy, ever. So this event, Should Page 3 Be Banned, it's been put on by the Badger newspaper, and me, Amy, and some other people here are part of the events team, and we've put this on in association with the Debating Society. So please go and pick up your badges whenever they're around, because it's an amazing paper and it has loads of cool stuff in, and we put stuff on like this. I'm now going to hand over to Abe, who will be chairing the debate. So thanks for coming.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you for coming out on this chilly evening. It's a great pleasure to welcome you to what is, without a shadow of a doubt, the best attended debate possibly I've ever been to. Page 3 has been in the news recently, and I promise that's the first pun I'm going to make this evening. It's a topical issue, but before we get onto that, I'm going to briefly outline the format of the evening. Speakers are going to have 5 minutes each to put their case across, and we'll then move to questions from the audience. And for that section of the evening, it will essentially be like question time. Only I will hopefully be slightly less like David Dimbleby. And we'll then move to closing statements. The evening's being recorded, and it will be put online by the wonderful staff from UniTV. So, without further ado, let's introduce the speakers. Caroline Lucas is the Green MP for Brighton Pavilion. She made headlines recently, bringing the issue to the attention of Parliament, when she wore a T-shirt saying "Ban Page 3" and was asked to remove it by the Speaker. Sitting next to her is Marina Pepper, who's a former Liberal Democrat councillor. She's previously worked as a journalist, author and model, and she's a graduate from our very own University of Sussex. Big hand for her. St Clare is a current Page 3 model. She has appeared in publications such as FHM, the Daily Star and Nuts, and she will be speaking in support of, in opposition to the motion. Big hand for her, please. Next to her is Donna Edmunds. Donna Edmunds is a UKIP Lewis District Council, and she will be running in the European Parliament elections for the South East. Neil Wallace, former editor of The Sun, was unable to be here with us tonight. Now, it seems like an appropriate moment to remind people of the rules of participation. If I would ask everyone when they ask questions, and indeed the speakers, to remain courteous and civil, and to avoid racism, sexism, homophobia, all of the usual things that one should avoid, please avoid. Also, if you could not interrupt while speakers are making their points, that would be simply splendid. There will come a time for questions in the middle. That's in fact the main part of the evening. But if you could not interrupt while speakers are making their points, that would be simply great. And yeah, so without further ado, let's kick things off. Please join me in welcoming the first speaker for the evening, Caroline Lucas.
But I am delighted to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me to propose the motion that Page 3 should be banned. And indeed, I am much in support of the No More Page 3 campaign. It's a campaign that has now already collected 126,000 signatures on a petition, which I think reflects a growing consensus that there's no place in a family newspaper, basically for pictures of women's breasts, pictures which essentially just reduce women down to their body parts. Now, what I'd really love would be for the owner of The Sun to voluntarily drag the newspaper into the 21st century by simply withdrawing page 3, as they actually already have done in the Irish edition of the newspaper. But if that doesn't happen, if persuasion doesn't happen, then I think we do need to ban the page 3 in that newspaper, basically to bring it into line with legislation that already exists, for example, when it comes to images that are shown on our TV screens before the 9 o'clock watershed. Now, there are a lot of myths about no more page 3 and the campaign against it, and I want to very quickly go through those myths. The first one is that people will say, oh, this is dreadful, this is censorship. And I want to make the case that it is not. These are pictures which would already be illegal if they were shown in workplaces because of equalities legislation. They would be restricted if they were being broadcast on our televisions because of the 9 o'clock watershed. That's not to say that no one should ever look at those pictures. Of course it's not. It's saying there are certain places where certain images are appropriate. And just as in broadcast media after 9 o'clock certain images are more appropriate, so we're saying that, you know, by all means go and look at those images, but not in what purports to be a family newspaper that kids can get hold of, that is exposed to everybody whether they want to see it or not. So I don't think this is censorship. Then people will say this is all about free choice. Well, I think we need to bear in mind that the Sun is seen by a lot more people than actually those who simply go out and choose to buy it. It is seen by people on the tube, in cafes, in workplaces. As Lucy Holmes, the founder of No More Page 3, says, we are all affected by page 3, whether we buy it or not, because we live in a society where the most widely read paper in the country makes normal the idea that women are there primarily for men's sexual pleasure. And here are just a few examples of how page 3 helps normalise what I would call the objectification of women's bodies. A schoolgirl wrote to the Everyday Sexism Project, saying that boys in her school hold up page 3 in the corridor and mark the girls out of 10 as they walk past. One woman reports sitting in a staff room every day while a male colleague shows page 3 to all the men with the words, "Would you do that?" A teacher who asked the class to bring in newspapers for painting and papier-mâché had to explain why, you know, basically there's a pair of breasts in front of them. A man who took his young daughter into a hairdresser's, and the guy next to them had the newspaper open in front of them. So the point is this, that it's not a question of people simply choosing to look at those images. It's those images being thrust in front of people of all ages who actually don't want to see it, who feel that it is degrading. If people want to go and see it, fine, go and find places where you can see it, but it doesn't need to be in those newspapers. Now, the next myth I want to challenge is this idea that you might hear that page 3 is just a bit of harmless fun. Where's the danger in it? Well, women have been degraded and belittled and served up as sex objects in some of our daily newspapers for many years. And the answer, I think, is not simply to turn over the page, because what we're talking about here is prejudice, harassment and violence. The United Nations Committee for the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women has repeatedly linked the portrayal of women as sexual objects with attitudes that underpin violence and discrimination against women and girls. The government itself commissioned a report called The Sexualisation of Young People, and basically found evidence that suggests a clear link between the consumption of sexualised images and a tendency to view women as objects, and also a normalisation of aggressive attitudes and behaviours. Now, no one is saying that someone looks at page 3 and goes out and commits a violent act. That would be absolutely ridiculous. What we are saying is that in a context where this kind of drip diet of objectified images of women is served up as normal, it makes those attitudes of aggression towards women also more normal and more difficult to challenge. There was an NSPCC survey that showed that 1 in 2 boys and 1 in 3 girls think there are some times when it's appropriate for a boy to hit a girl or to force a girl to have sex with her. Those images and those attitudes don't happen in a vacuum. They happen in a context where women are served up as sex objects on a daily basis. Again, this is not censorship. This is about simply saying that if you want to go and look at those images, by all means go and do it. But don't do it in a newspaper that purports to be a family newspaper, that is brought into people's homes, that is put in front of the kids, and where people are basically seeing it whether they want to or not. I'm not sure what your last shoe meant, but I shall simply go on to say that page 3 is now 43 years old. We have grown up as a society, even if the Sun hasn't. You know, and basically as a proud feminist, I don't think that page 3 is appropriate. I want it to change, just as I want equal pay, equal representation and equal freedom for everybody. Hell!
page 3, the 3 being a number. So if you want to tweet #BadgerPage3, do so, and if your tweets are pertinent or amusing, then they'll be read out. And yes, but now let's move on to the second speaker of the evening. Would you please join me in welcoming Donna?
It's lovely to see so many people here today. So, last year a petition on an online site called Page 3 to be banned managed to collect 40,000 signatures. I think Caroline Lucas said it was a little bit more than that by now. So Newsnight ran a piece on it in which Harriet Harman debated with Neil Wallace, who was supposed to be here today. I saw that and was sort of provoked into a fit of libertarian righteousness. So I did the obvious thing. I whipped out my laptop and I wrote an article for the Commentator putting forward the view that the drive to ban things like Page 3 was a Puritanism, and that sort of thing ought to have left our shores along with the Puritans themselves that sailed for the American colonies centuries ago. So I'm assuming it was that kind of article in particular that got me invited here this evening. So I revisited it when I was writing this speech to remind myself which arguments I'd used. While I was there, I perused the comments section and came across this. They're usually quite useful actually, which I thought put the argument much more succinctly than I'd managed. Someone called Pat said, "Some girls have figures, some have the ability to do figures, a lucky few have both. That the first group should be able to profit from their gifts seems as obvious to me that the second group should be able to profit from theirs. Of course, there are a great many with both gifts who need to maximise their returns to pay for the education and develop their ability to do figures. As to exploitation, perhaps Ms. Harman is right, but if so, she should be asking that they be paid more, not banned from working. It seems a bit odd to be putting people out of work in order to save them. Or does Ms. Harman think that closing down factories is a way of improving the lives of workers?"
That's a toys, Joe.
It's very hard. The case against Page 3 boils down to snobbery. In the Newsnight debate I mentioned, Harriet Harman said girls should be able to have higher aspirations than just looking good. Well, girls are able to have higher aspirations, and I don't use the word higher because I think that's making a value judgment of other people's career choices. Girls have been outdoing boys in terms of GCSE and A-level results now for the past couple of decades, and have now overtaken their male contemporaries in terms of pay, at least in their early careers. The ONS found that women in their 20s earned 1.8% more than men of the same age in 2010, rising to 2.9% in 2012, and it's still going up, so you girls will be earning more than you boys next year. Girls have worked hard, studied, and as women are fully able to compete with men in the world of work. What these people don't like is that some girls actively choose to be glamour models as a career, and the reason they don't like that is because, as I've said, they're snobs. Guardian readers such as my opponents here don't like The Sun. It's very little to do with the girls themselves, because it appeals to the working classes. It's rough and ready. It's read by white bandmen, hairdressers, labourers, and it revels in the more salacious side of life. That sort of thing has always horrified the more refined middle classes. But Guardian readers can't simply ban The Sun, much as they'd like to, so they go after what they can, the girls on Page 3. That sort of thing can be dressed up as a moral crusade, as it has been, whereas attempts to close down free speech are rather more tricky to sell to the public, especially when so many of the public are buying The Sun. Anyway, you can tell the campaign for ban Page 3 is driven by snobbery, as there isn't a parallel petition to shut down fine art galleries, which regularly show photographs of news. This is obviously not a photograph, but it's been used. This is a modern fine art photography piece. This one here was taken from a photographer's website where it was filed under the heading Celebrating Women. Isn't celebrating women, including their form, something that self-proclaimed feminists should be doing? A couple of weeks ago, the Daily Politics did one of their balls in glass boxes to straw polls. And they asked participants to justify their choice. One woman, who voted for it to be banned, said, "I have my young daughter here today. I don't want her growing up seeing breasts." Well, I have news for that woman. Her daughter's going to have 2 of her own. Why teach her to be ashamed of them? Yeah. But of course, there's a far more important point to be made here, that of the general call to ban things at all. You may not like Page 3. I can't say I ever look at the girls when I read that paper. However, imagine that we had a society where we banned everything that the vocal minority didn't particularly like. What would such a society look like? I might want to ban people turning up in villages they don't live in and protesting against natural gas extraction. Others might want to ban certain literature or plays. If you have the confidence in your case, public pressure will eventually be successful, and that is exactly how it should be in a free society. If you're trying to get our way by banning things that you do not like instead of living peacefully and tolerating each other, our lives will just turn into a power struggle as we seek to ban all things that do not accord with our own taste. Who should be the arbiters of taste? You, me? Isn't the mark of a civilised society that the people within it respect each other's choices even if we don't agree with them?
I'd like to thank Donna for her speech and move to Marina, the second speaker for the proposition. Please join us. Welcome.
I think I should just start by saying I'm the daughter of a C2. That means that my dad was a skilled worker, and we had the sun in the house, and I read the Stage Star as a teenager, and I still think it's wrong. I just want to start by, you know, it's very easy to go, well, we think that the sun might cause this, or we think the sun is this. So I just want to establish what we do know about the sun. The first bit of my speech is called The Truth. There's a bit of irony there. We do know that the sun prints lies. We do know that the sun suppresses voices of dissent. Today they had a piece slagging off feminists, ironically. We also know that the Sun is part of a stable of publications that concentrates power, right-wing power, in too few hands and influences the whole political spectrum and cultural populism as well. We also know, journalism students among us, that the Sun is a byword for a continual declining of journalistic standards. All I've said so far is true. That is what we know. Okay. Secondly, have you got something to say?
Yeah.
Climate.
What you said has got nothing to do with the debate.
Oh, well, never mind. What you said didn't have that much to do with it. Secondly, I'd like to take this opportunity to apologise to every single one of you and to everyone that isn't here. I spend a lot of my time dedicated to making the world a better place, a fairer world, a more equal world. I don't tolerate racism, I don't tolerate inequality, I do tolerate class war. It is class war. The Sun is about class war. It attacks the working classes constantly by promoting the Tory party, promoting things like the sale of council homes. When people get old, they still have to sell that council home to pay for their care. So they haven't got anything out of it. So if anyone's attacking the working classes, it's the Sun and the Tories. It ain't people that are against page 3. I know that probation officers will not have the Sun in their place of work because they work with sexual offenders. So they don't think it's a good idea. They think it has influence on people like that. I'm going to just take their word for it. So what I really object to is what the Sun contributes towards, partly, but really it's the fact that even when the Sun, its own editor, tries to justify it, it says sex sells. Page 3 sells newspapers. Well, yes, it did once. You know, they got the circulation up to 4 million at the highest, but it's only 2 million now, and it's losing year on year 9% of its sales, which by my calculations is about 200,000 readers a year. That's buyers. That's not readers. That's buyers. They say that 7.5 million read it. But that's what the advertisers say. Now, what I really object to is this page 3 is actually the poster girl for capitalism. It's saying it doesn't matter about equality, it doesn't matter about misogyny. What matters is our money, us making a profit. Rupert Murdoch making a profit over the exploitation of teenage girls and the exploitation of men who apparently can't work it out for themselves and therefore don't know any better. That it's just a harmless bit of fun, saucy seaside postcard kind of fun. It's all right. It's just men looking at girls. Men like girls. That's kind of the best bit. It's a British institution. That is exactly the defence they've always used for Jimmy Savile. So, I am supporting this ban of page 3, and I'm not one for banning stuff. I'm an anarchist, really. I am up for mutual aid and cooperation. But, you know, you can ban it from your campus. You can ban it from your libraries, you can ban it from your student digs and your student homes, and that will eventually get through. Like all things capitalist, if you want to hit it, you have to hit it where it hurts, in its pocket. Don't buy it, but go out of your way to make sure no one else buys it. And while you're at it, sign the No Page 3 petition. It's over 100,000 now. Let's get it up there and let's get rocking with this debate on equality for women, equality for race, equality for class. Start with page 3 and then we can work on the rest. And I truly believe that, ladies and gentlemen. Support the debate, ban page 3.
Thank you, Marina, for an impassioned speech. I'd like you to join me in welcoming the final speaker of this part of the discussion, Summer.
Hello. I don't really have a speech, I kind of have more of a story of what I went through and why I became a page 3 girl. Back when I was 13, 14, I used to buy Look magazine, and every week that would have a celebrity like Beyonce, Nicole Richie, Cheryl Cole, you know the type I'm talking about, and they would have the latest celeb diets, and I actually got into a position where I nearly became underweight because I had these images that I thought that was right, and I didn't really have the women that would promote a more positive image, so that's why I became a page 3 girl in the end, because I actually became really ill, and yeah, I actually found page 3, I did find page 3 in the sun at my nan's house, and then I thought, okay, this is what a woman should look like, not what the other women's magazines tell everyone to look like. So that's that. Redundancy. If they got rid of page 3, I'd lose my job. We've already got enough problems as it is in this country. Why make even more people redundant? Not just models, but photographers, stylists, makeup artists. That's a lot of people. I have my own business, so when people say that people discriminate because, you know, they're stupid and they're blonde, I don't agree with it at all. It's just discriminating. And because, why do they want to get rid of them? Because they are snobs. Like, if you don't want your children or anyone to see them, don't let them be in reach. Like, it's easy to avoid. Like, they're not, everyone's saying, oh, we're on the bottom of the shelves. No, they're not. They're at the top, right at the top where you can't even see them. I never noticed them as a child, did you? Yeah, the sun is, but not the lads' bags. So you don't just want to ban page 3, do you? You want to get rid of the whole thing. My time, thank you. And as for, I don't even know where to start anymore. It's got so many like, yeah, I mean, people have been posing for Playboy since the 60s. I mean, Marilyn Monroe was such a positive image. She wasn't a negative thing, and so many people aspire to be like her. And I'd rather have her body image than some of what they've seen in women's weekly magazines. And that's me done. Thank you.
Thank you, Shabbat. So we now move to questions part of the evening, the point at which you guys put questions to people on the panel. So if you'd like, if you have something to say, please keep it concise and on point. So yeah, without further ado, hands up people, hands up if you'd like to ask a question. Yes?
Hi, I've actually had anorexia and eating disorders for about 10 years, and my personal experience is it's more the way boys influenced by stuff like page 3 and porn have spoken to me and treated me that has made me like that than images of celebrities in page 3. I actually, when you look at Marilyn Monroe, she had severe mental illnesses. She had severe mental illness, which people don't think about when they think of her. They think of her as a dumb blonde. She was actually a very intelligent woman that had a mental illness. Audrey Hepburn had an eating disorder, and it's all to do with the way that men treat you. They don't think you're clever enough to talk to them. And the only way that you can attain that is by showing your boobs, or being skinny, or being like a child, a passive child. I'm speaking really from genuine personal experience. We've probably been through similar things, but to me, that has made me more against page 3 than for
but
it.
Page 3 girls aren't anorexic. We have size 14 page 3 models.
That's not my point. My point is you said that it was you went against that image, but that image is part of the same problem, which is the objectification of women, whether it's, oh, look at her, how curvy and big boobs she is, or look how skinny she is. It's the same problem. Do you not see that? Do you not see how
Take a couple of questions at once, and then so the panelists have a bit of time to think about things, and then we're going to move to that point. So any further questions? Yes, black t-shirt.
I've got a question for Caroline. I thought Marina's speech actually highlighted Donna's point really well, that what you really hate is this kind of perceived right-wing conspiracy, right-wing establishment, and fine, that's a viewpoint, you can hate it, you cannot hate it, and therefore you want to ban that kind of stuff, so you want to ban page 3. But Caroline recognises that you can't just go around banning things you don't like, which is why you come up with this reason that it's actually being thrust upon us. People who don't want to see page 3 are seeing page 3. So you've gone around, you know you can't ban things that you don't like, so you found this way of getting around it. And don't you think that's a little bit weak? Don't you think that's not a great reason? I mean, is it really thrust upon people? Do you really see page 3 unless you
One more question. One more question. Yes.
I just want to ask Donna and Summer whether they think boobs are news, and if they're not,
Sorry,
why
boobs are?
News. Because that's what newspapers are for. And so, if they're not news, then what are they doing in the middle of a mainstream newspaper?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I mean, look, they have to sell their papers, and it sells papers. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You know, all of us here are women. We've all got makeup on today. I think we like to. Okay. You know, images sell things. I think that's the crux of it. But you know, they also put an awful lot in there that I don't really like. I'm not a big fan of the fact that they have so much celebrity news. I don't think that's news either. But at the end of the day, you know, I think the point is, if you don't like it, don't buy it. Because at the end of the day, if it stops selling, they stop doing it. I mean, that's all there is to say.
Where are the penises on page 3?
We'll get to the penises later.
I mean, actually, let me just discuss that, because you know we do have the Diet Coke guy, so you do get men selling things with their bodies on it. Can I talk about? Are we not doing all the questions?
We'll do, yes. Oh, sorry.
Yes. I just want to talk to this girl about the anorexic.
Okay, yeah, sure.
Yeah, so I was going to come back on this point about this other girl saying that she was anorexic as well.
Yeah.
Look. you're two different people, and therefore, of course, you're going to have different experiences. I think that's just sort of part of the course. But I understand what you're saying about the fact that guys, it's the way guys treated you that have forced you into that. And I'm really sorry to hear that. But a lot of the problem that we've got with young men treating women sexually has actually more to do with the fact that porn is so available on the internet. And I think that is a problem. You know, if you were going to talk about that, then I'd be way on side and say, yeah, you know, we have to sort of find a way to stop young children accessing, you know, pornographic image. I think that's a completely different deal. But to a woman's breasts, I mean, come on, guys, you know, we're not Puritans. Like,
we're not Puritans. You're absolutely right. And nobody has actually said that we don't want these images anywhere. What we're saying is where they're appropriate. And that,
why not normalise women?
It's so interesting that you can't actually even address the issue which is about page 3. So in your response, it was all about how you want to ban anybody modelling, you want to ban glamour models and so forth. We don't. What we're saying is we don't think it's appropriate in what is supposed to be a family newspaper. To the point that the man in the black shirt, this idea that you don't have to see it if you don't want to. Look at the No More Page 3 website. Look at the number of testimonies there of people who did not want to be exposed to it. But if you're standing behind somebody on a tube and they've got it wide open, if your family people are bringing it back into your home, if you're next to somebody in a cafe and there it is, that is humiliating and it is there and it is whatever you want to have your response to it.
Why are you ashamed of women's bodies, Carol?
I'm not ashamed of it. You can't actually engage with what we're saying. No one is saying that women shouldn't put their bodies in certain places. We are saying what is appropriate in page 3 of the newspaper. And you said it was fine to have women's breasts. Well, why not completely nude? Where would you draw the line? Would you have completely nude?
Hold on. We'll leave that question there. Let's have some more questions from the floor. Yes, please. You, sir, and then you, madam, followed by, yes, lady at the front there.
Yeah, so I think this point was first raised by your speech, Caroline. And I think it's a question generally posed to the speakers for the motion. So you talked about dragging the sun into the 21st century. Surely, couldn't we argue that perhaps the sun was before its time? I mean, in a world where, I guess, sex wasn't openly talked about, and we've kind of moved into a more liberal society where sex is openly talked about, where this kind of thing, I think, does have a place, where we perhaps walk down the street and we see not only adverts, say, like women's perfume, where there's nudely clad women, but also we walk down the street and we see like the Armani advert, where there's just men in like tiny pants. Would you not argue that perhaps, well, obviously you wouldn't argue, but I'm just wondering what your logic is behind dragging it into the 21st century. Thank you.
So you just said that you just asked Caroline why do you not want to normalise these images of naked women in our daily papers? And I just would really like to hear you come back on the evidence that Caroline gave of the link between these objectifying, sexualised, fetishising images and the violent attitudes that they prevail, and also as well the issues about breastfeeding and how there's been a lot written lately about how and not just written, all kinds of expression about how mothers feel embarrassed to breastfeed their children in public because these images of women's breasts have been objectified and sexualized, and therefore feeding your baby in a public place becomes a sexualized thing.
I just want to talk about body image and how people keep saying about normalising women's bodies and stuff. And I'm gay, I've seen loads of boobs, and they don't all look like page 3 girls. That's the thing, you're kind of saying that women should look like this, but some women don't have small boobs. And you've got all these women having like boobs, like boob jobs and stuff. That's not a normal image of women. Page 3 girls are not, it's not what every woman looks like.
We have bigger girls and we have smaller girls. I mean, as a male clerk, she's only got a C cup.
Maddox bought The Sun in 1969. The only person he met for lunch to discuss the editorship was Larry Lamb, who became the editor. And the reason he hired Larry was because Larry said that apart from the obvious, there's only one thing the British working man is interested in. The obvious was television, and the least obvious was sex. And the paper, and what you put into context of, they needed to put the circulation up because radio had destroyed the circulation of the newspapers. Before The Sun, there was a newspaper called The Herald, which was left-wing, very cheeky-chappy, very much up the workers. It really did, you know, circulation collapsed. It was relaunched as The Sun. It didn't take off. So in the age of television, with new technology coming in, allowing pictures to be into the newspaper, they went for it. They gave us gambling with bingo, they gave us boobs, and they gave us belittling, all the Bs. Only a B, not a C, but anyway. What's interesting is that Larry Lamb, Lord rest his soul, he's gone now, but he said, well, you know, yes, I was responsible for page 3, and you know, I really rather wish I hadn't. So even he thought its time had come. For breastfeeding, I think that was a really good thing to raise, and I wish we'd raised it. It is true that young women, especially young women, don't breastfeed, and the reason they give is their breasts have other purposes other than for the feeding of their children. And that has really serious health implications. It has implications for the IQ of the child and the health of the child, whether it will grow up to have allergies, whether in old age it will have stronger bones. For women that's especially important. After the menopause you're going to have brittle bones, so you know what you have in the first 6 months of your life is essential. And the idea that page 3 prevents some young people, babies, having access to breast milk, that alone really should, I hate the word should, in a grown-up society that cares about equality and equity of opportunity, that alone would be reason enough for banning The Sun. We're in the 21st century, we don't need page 3 of The Sun.
Okay, more questions. Hands up high. Yes, one lady in the green top, followed by the lady with the sort of, I don't know, burgundy, and then the gentleman with the grey Fanta sweatshirt.
Yeah, the question I have relates back to the breastfeeding issue. I feel like everyone in the room is sort of pointing towards the idea that men didn't find breasts sexually attractive before The Sun. I feel like men seeing breasts out to breastfeed, they shouldn't see that as a sexual thing, but whether or not we have page 3, they might. The only reason that breasts are in The Sun is because men find them sexually attractive in the first place. So it's not The Sun that makes breasts sexually attractive, they just are.
Next question.
Yeah, it's more of a comment than a question. I left my seminar at 10 to 6, arguing with, you know, my seminar people sat in the front row saying, no, page 3 shouldn't be banned, women should be able to do what they want. You have come here with such a poorly constructed argument. You were mouthing bollocks while Caroline Lucas was speaking after Abe said, don't be rude and don't yell things and let people speak. That now you had such an opportunity to get people to, you know, not want to ban page 3, to make you sound like clever. You have made yourself, I'm sorry, I hate to be rude, but you've made yourself sound like an absolute idiot.
Any sort of commentary in that phrase to a non-existent minimum, that would be great. The final question, yes, gentleman at the front.
Do you think that banning page 3 is a short-term solution to a much longer-term problem? And by that I mean, do you think it's too easy to ban page 3? Do you not think that there are attitudinal factors that you have to address rather than simply banning something?
Well, I think that is a good question, and I think that the two things are related. I don't think that you can sort of say, well, let's not worry about page 3, we'll just worry about attitudes, because attitudes are formed precisely by the fact that from a very small age, kids are aware of page 3 being normal in their, in their houses, on the trains, on the cafes, and so forth. So I think you can't kind of say that attitudes are formed in some kind of neutral way, and then there's all this other kind of consumer stuff out here. It's the interrelation between them. I'd certainly agree with you that it's the case that if you got rid of page 3, that's not going to change the world. Of course it's not, but it would be one step in the overall battle for greater women's equality, and crucially for young kids being able to grow up, then boys and girls, with just better confidence in their own bodies. I hate the sense that you hear from young girls that they feel so constrained by this image that they're served up, that they have to look like that. And it's no wonder that we get people with eating disorders and other problems when those images are absolutely plastered all around us. I mean, it is just thrust down our throats from such a young age that there's a certain way to look, and if you don't look that way, then you're not good enough. So I think attitudes are important, but they're related to it. Can I just come back to the woman who said that the sun didn't make breasts attractive? And that is certainly the case. They were attractive before that and will be after that. But I think the issue is about women's relationship to those images. When we're talking about the breastfeeding concern, I think it's the fact that women have absorbed messages that have sexualised their own body parts and feel as if now, if they get their breasts out to feed a baby, that somehow they are being sexualised, that they're attracting those kinds of attitudes and so on. So I think it's much more about how the women feel about it than how the men think about it. That's what the sun is damaging.
More questions. Gentleman at the front with the fetching jacket. Gentleman at the back with the fetching
It's a question for Donna. I think it's interesting you can come and speak about equality for women, which I think is an important conversation to have, when you're part of a political party that fundamentally doesn't respect equality for all people. Just wondered if
Yeah, I've got two questions, one for Donna and one for Summer. First, to Donna, it's basically on the same lines, but you speak about tolerance, and you're kind of labelling these guys intolerant, while saying that indifference towards page 3 is to be considered more tolerant. Considering that you are here as an advocate for UKIP, I'd like to tell us a bit about your immigration policies and relate that to your tolerance, supposedly, of this issue. Why you think it is reasonable to say that feminists fighting for equality is intolerant, whereas like maintaining indifference to the subject is tolerant. You might have a good idea on that, I can't quite understand it. And to Summer, you told us at first that you got into the business because magazines with like Beyonce and Cheryl Cole and whatnot made you feel bad about yourself. Is that not exactly what the Sun is doing to thousands and thousands of girls?
Is UKIP intolerant? Well, obviously I don't think so.
Yeah.
Look, I just heard the word racist again. Look, my mother isn't British, so I'm first generation immigrant, right? So I'm all for immigration. I think immigration is a good thing. I think people coming here and working is a good thing. Obviously, as I say, my mother's family did it. We now live in Britain and we're very happy here. And I want to see other people have the same opportunities. So UKIP is not anti-immigration, okay? Let's get that straight. We do have...
What's UKIP policy on page 3?
Well, the question was on immigration, that's what I'm asking.
Okay. What are we talking about that?
And then I will relate it back, yeah. So, let me just briefly talk about UKIP policy on immigration, then I'll relate it back. So, what we say is, we don't want to close doors completely. What we're saying is that we want to see a system like they have in America, they have in Australia, where we attract the best and the brightest, because well, yeah, but I'm not going to get into it. But because it opens the door where you allow everyone to create problems. Like here we're seeing that young people can't buy houses, young people can't get jobs. That obviously those problems need to be addressed as well, and stemming the flow of immigration does that. So that's that. So what we're about is not intolerance, it's actually, I mean, we say it a lot, but it's common sense, you know. Yes, all of these things are wonderful. Like, yes, we have the aspirations that you guys have to have this wonderful open society where everyone's thriving, they're all working hard, they're all, you know, building better futures for their families. But the problem I have with people on the left, you know, Caroline and Marina, is that they sort of seem to sort of see this pie in the sky solution and go, well, wouldn't it be wonderful if, and we'll just do that and we'll just ban the stuff we don't like. Well, yeah, it would be wonderful if, but well, you know, the world doesn't really work like that, so we have to look at reality, and this thing that does impact this thing, therefore just, you know, banning
They banned it in Ireland.
Yeah. Pushing under the table does not solve problems. I think
Hold on.
Sorry, can you repeat your question?
Yeah, you said that the reason you got into the magazines is because you felt badly about yourself and having read other magazines and saw The Sun and thought that was what real women should look like. Fact is, that's not what most women look like, and The Sun is currently making thousands and thousands of young and old women feel very bad about themselves. How can you wish that upon someone else when it's kind of like,
obviously everyone can have their own choices, that's just mine. I mean, I personally don't see the people in page 3 as being unhealthy, or I wouldn't say they're all one shape. I'd say we're all different shapes and we're all different sizes.
Thank you. Right, more questions. I think this will be the penultimate round, so hands up if you want to ask them. Yes, lady there, followed by the cream sort of sweater there, and lady in front row there with the carpet.
Yeah, but I just wanted to say, so what we're all here because we either think that page 3 should be banned or we think it shouldn't be banned in a newspaper. I think the point that someone made earlier, they shouted out that there is no male genitalia in a newspaper. That's not why you buy a newspaper. I think the fact that we are meant to have gender equality in this society is just completely, you can completely see that we don't, because there are no male, there is nothing male in the newspaper. I think someone else also brought up the fact about, you know, we should, as a liberal society now, we should, you know, we should see, we've got these perfume adverts with naked men on, or nearly naked men on. They're not put in a newspaper. That's why they're not put in a newspaper.
You don't see their private parts.
That they are put on a billboard, like they are, we're not made to see them. And I think someone also said about the fact that it's not thrust in our faces. Like there are, did you not hear at the start, there are so many examples of how it's been thrust in people's faces, and people aren't happy with it. I think we don't have to see the male equivalent of that, and I don't think we should be able, we should have to see the women equivalent of that either. I also think that both of your arguments, you both contradicted actually what you've said with, what Joe brought up just then about you saying that you got into the business because you felt so inadequate in your own body because of seeing these images. Do you not see that that's what page 3 are doing? And also, Donna, I just want, just one more thing. Donna, you also said that you would
mine's just like a really quick point about how like body image and stuff, and how like I understand some of you saying that like a lot of women like maybe a bit bigger than others and stuff in page 3, but like there is absolutely no hair on any of those girls, and like that's something that's been so ingrained into like all like women now that you're supposed to be hairless, and I hate to like draw on anecdotes, especially ones that aren't my own, but a woman posted a picture of herself in a bikini on her Instagram, and like she had like loads of hair everywhere because she didn't get rid of it because she naturally grows hair there, which is along with every other woman in the room and man. So yeah, it's just a really quick point about that. It's like, how do you think that kind of like image of kind of hair removal and that kind of photoshopped kind of, I don't know, neat, clean woman, like what do you think about that? Basically? Childlike.
And last question.
Yeah, just as a final comment, just to highlight the importance of images, because we can argue about cause and effect, and we can argue about, you know, we give anecdotal evidence, we can say page 3 made me feel like this and that made me feel great, but just in images and how they affect our society, different mental disorders are cultural specific. So, for example, in Western society, you have much higher rates of anorexia, bulimia.
That's not true. That's not true.
Okay, well, okay, so I just make a point. Well, that's what so obviously, you know, we do get it right in our society about how women look and things. Just my point, I'm sorry if the statistics are wrong, but just that I was taught case study in A-level psychology of small islands that didn't receive electricity, who had no record of mental health disorders relating to eating disorders, where they lived, and when television was introduced and visual images of women were introduced, then they suddenly were getting eating disorders. So that's just a point I'd like to make, that visual images do have an impact on how we view ourselves, and that's why I think.
Can I just quickly? Can I quickly just add something? I've got the main point. So the image was banned. The image was banned. Of the hair was banned. That's what I'm saying.
Can we answer the question?
It doesn't help. It doesn't help. Basically.
I agree with you. I honestly do, yeah. Yeah, that's all I can really say to that.
Okay, fantastic.
Can I answer a few of these questions? Yeah, so what did we have here? We have, okay, so the gender equality one. Can I ask the women in the audience, how many of you actually like looking at men's penises?
We have to hear this, don't we?
Naturally, I can have a more curvaceous and therefore attractive body shape. I think that's just an I think the reason that we see so many images of women is not because men are evil, it's because images of women sell more than images of men's penises do. I mean, if you watch something like Strictly Come Dancing, they often take the guys' shirts off and portray them as sexual objects, which I actually find a little bit uncomfortable, if I'm honest. I don't think that's very nice. But when it happens, I don't want to ban it!
People are curvaceous and therefore attractive. In other words, your idea of what is attractive is culturally conditioned. When you ask people if they liked looking at men's penises, you thought they were all going to go, ugh, and they didn't. They were
Okay, great. It has been a hell of a ride. Okay, so that we are moving to the last stage of the evening, which is the closing speeches. I'd like to thank everyone who asked a question. Let's have a big round of applause. If I could ask Caroline to make her closing speech, that would be simply fantastic. I'm sorry, sir, that now is not the time. I'm afraid not. Sit down.
Let's do it. Fundamentally, are boobs news?
Sir, this is not the time. Caroline, please.
In terms of trying to sum up where we're at, I think some of the best points have come from you, obviously. I think that we have successfully trashed the idea that what we're talking about here is censorship. We are not talking about censorship, we're talking about what is appropriate in a newspaper. The clue is in the name, and our point is that it's not suitable for a newspaper. And we've also talked about the fact that it does have a big effect on what people grow up thinking that their body image should be. It should be either curvy like this or curvy like that. It doesn't matter whether it's a size 12 or a 14, whatever, or an 8 or a 10. The point is you're being told what your body should look like. And people internalise that and they get used to the idea that that gets served up for men's pleasure and that is somehow normal. And I think we need to get away from the idea that that is normal, and that means putting it away from newspapers. And the last thing I just want to make is that, you know, what we're talking about here is serious. You know, we haven't spent very much time talking about the epidemic of violence against women that there is in this country and in many others. The fact that people are scared to walk down the streets at night in certain areas. And again, I'm not saying the one is directly linked to the other, but that when you've got a culture where these kinds of images are more and more normalised, when they're just served up, the idea that women are there for men's pleasure gets deeply ingrained and then is more likely to lead to attitudes that I think do harm women.
I think banning of anything is censorship, because what you're ultimately doing is saying, you know, my opinion overrules yours, and that is, in essence, censorship. Look, you know, if you can ban page three if you really want to.
Ban UKIP.
Men would still see women as sexual objects, because to men, women are. I think that's natural, where people are having sexual relationships. Can you? When people are having sexual relationships, you know, I mean, let's not even that down. But yeah. So if you ban page three, what's next? That's the real question here. You know. So you ban page three. Women are still seen as objects in your view. Would you then ban everything that shows any woman? Would you ask to go around wearing skirts? Because in Muslim countries, this is where they're authentic. They can see that women are very
I don't think you have to be a Puritan to be against page three. I just want to mention a couple of places where we can celebrate everything about our womanliness, our bodies and what they're built for. The naked bike ride. Ladies and gentlemen, the most empowering moment of my life. Stopping the traffic for me. And after the first 3 minutes, they weren't even looking at my breasts. No, we can celebrate our bodies. You don't have to be a Puritan. If we ban page three, it would have meant that we'd have had a huge debate, and we could have addressed people like Miss Edmondson here, this idea that Edmonds,
get my name right.
The idea, the UKIP lady, we will have had an amazing debate, and young people, male and female, will feel empowered. So keep on trucking and get this thing banned, ladies.
Summer has forfeited the right of closing speech, which means that we now move to the most interesting part of the evening, the point where we vote on the motion. Now, the usual way we do this is by counting everyone who puts their hands up, but we could be here for a while if we do that, so we'll probably just do it by rough numbers. So, all those who would support the motion, this House would ban page 3. So that is to say, those people who would ban page 3, put their hands up. Okay. And hands down. All those against? Yay! And all those abstaining? Okay, so by a fairly substantial majority, the motion is not passed. Now, we have a second vote, and that is for if you could raise your hand if you have changed the opinion that you came in here with. So, hands up.
Wow.
Interesting. Great. Okay. Thank you very much. I'd like to, some thanks is in order. I'd like to apologise to those who haven't had the chance to speak. We have a limited amount of time and there's a lot of people's questions. So we have to stop here. Thank you to the panel. Thank you to the audience. Thanks is particularly in order to Amy Bracewell. Annie and Bree and everyone else at the badge. Who have been instrumental in making this evening happen. Thank you to UniTV who've been filming, and thank you for coming.